October 1960, a giant was born. Nigeria, the brightest hope of post-colonial Africa, stepped onto the world stage with vast wealth, a rich culture, and an ocean of promise.
The challenge of Nigeria as a free state in 20th century Africa is the need to revive the stature of man in Africa and restore the dignity of man in the world. Nigerians believe passionately in the fundamental human rights. We regard all races of the human family as equal.
But beneath the celebrations lay fault lines carved deep by imperial hands. Less than 7 years later, those fault lines would fracture entirely, plunging the nation into a catastrophic civil war that would redefine modern warfare, weaponize starvation, and broadcast human agony directly into the living rooms of millions across the globe. This is the story of Biafra, a nation that bled, fought, and starved before the world's eyes. The story of the Nigerian Civil War does not begin with a gunshot. It begins with a map. When the British Empire consolidated its hold over the Niger compound, it fused over 250 distinct ethnic groups into a single administrative unit. By the time they departed in 1960, Nigeria was structured into 3 giant regions, each dominated by a major ethnic group. The North, dominated by the Muslim Hausa Fulani, politically conservative and populous. The West, dominated by the Yoruba, culturally rich and commercially driven. The East, dominated by the Igbo, highly educated, egalitarian, and increasingly prosperous. It was a volatile marriage of convenience. The federal government in Lagos quickly became an arena of fierce ethnic rivalry, corruption, and rigged elections. The political thermometer was rising, and the mercury was about to burst. In the dead of night on January 15th, 1966, a group of young, idealistic, and primarily Igbo army majors executed a bloody coup d'etat. They assassinated the federal prime minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, the powerful northern premier, Sir Ahmadu Bello, and several others. Though the majors claimed they wanted to rid the country of corruption, the casualty list told a different story to the rest of the nation. Almost all the killed leaders were Northerners or Westerners, while Igbo leaders were largely spared. The head of the army, Major General Johnson Agigi Ironsi, an Igbo, suppressed the coup but took power himself. To the north, this was not a revolution. It was an Igbo conspiracy for total dominance. 6 months later, the pendulum of vengeance swung back with terrifying velocity. On July 29, 1966, Northern officers launched a brutal counter-coup. Agui Ironsi was assassinated, and a young, charismatic 31-year-old Northern Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon was thrust into power as the supreme commander. But the coup in the barracks spilled over into the streets of the North. What followed remains one of the darkest chapters in African history. Mob violence erupted across northern cities. Igbo men, women, and children were hunted down in their homes, markets, and churches. Between 10,000 and 30,000, Igbos were systematically massacred.
We've lived in the north for so many years, and the reward the Hausas could give my poor father was to kill him. He was the first man killed in the May massacre. After being chased for some few yards, they shot at him, and then when they got him, they had to slice him into 2. Like, you know, when you want to slice your bread into 2, a human being being sliced into 2. Can you imagine such a thing?
Over 1 million traumatized Igbos fled their homes in the north and west, packed into trains, lorries, and footpaths, streaming back to their ancestral homeland in the eastern region. They arrived with missing limbs, horrific burns, and stories of unimaginable terror. In the east, the military governor was Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, the Oxford-educated son of a billionaire, an eloquent orator with a sweeping beard and a dramatic flair. Ojukwu looked at the incoming tide of broken refugees and declared that the federal government could no longer protect its citizens. With diplomatic options exhausted and the ground beneath them burning, Ojukwu made the fateful choice. On May 30th, 1967, he raised a new flag, a horizontal tricolor of black, red, and green, with a golden rising sun at its center. In Enugu, the new capital, the streets erupted in wild celebration. People danced, believing they had finally found sanctuary. But in Lagos, Yakubu Gowon viewed secession as a treasonous act that would dismantle Africa's most promising nation.
Do you think that it will be necessary to use military force to bring down Colonel Ojukwu's regime?
Yes, it is necessary.
He ordered a police action to crush the rebellion. He expected it to take a few weeks. He was catastrophically wrong. On July 6th, 1967, the first shots were fired on the northern border of Biafra. The Nigerian army, heavily armed and outnumbering the secessionists, pushed south. But Biafra struck back with shocking audacity.
We were ambushed at about 4 o'clock, a heavy machine gun ambush. For a while it seemed that the 3 battalions spread out along this jungle road here were pinning the machine guns down. And then at about 6 o'clock, the 12th Battalion panicked. Most of them are recruits that have come in on a crash.
In August 1967, a Biafran blitzkrieg commanded by Victor Banjo crossed the Niger River, captured the Midwestern region in just hours, and raced toward the federal capital of Lagos. Panic gripped Lagos. The Biafrans were just 135 miles away, at a town called Or. It was the high watermark of the Biafran Republic. At Or, a ferocious, bloody battle ensued. The Nigerian army rallied, utilizing superior numbers and firepower to shatter the Biafran advance. The retreat turned into a rout. The hunter became the hunted. By early 1968, the nature of the war had shifted. The federal government abandoned its police action mindset and initiated total war. Nigeria secured massive geopolitical backing. In a strange Cold War twist, both the British government, protecting its oil interests, and the Soviet Union, seeking a foothold in West Africa, supplied Lagos with heavy artillery, Saladin armored cars, and MiG fighter jets. Biafra was completely outgunned. Its soldiers fought with outdated rifles, homemade landmines called Ogbunigwe, the mass killer, and sheer, desperate willpower. One by one, Biafra's vital lifelines were severed. Enugu, the capital, fell, forcing Ojukwu's government to flee into the hinterlands. Calabar and Port Harcourt, the crucial deep-water ports, were captured by federal forces led by commanders like the notorious Colonel Benjamin the Black Scorpion Adekunle. With the loss of the coastline, Biafra was entirely landlocked, surrounded on all sides by federal forces. Nigeria declared a total land, sea, and air blockade on the Breakaway Republic. It was here that the strategy of the Nigerian government shifted to something far more controversial. Chief Obafemi Awolowo, the federal minister of finance, famously encapsulated the policy. Starvation is a legitimate weapon of war, and we have a duty to use it to bring our enemies to their knees. Within the shrinking Biafran enclave, millions of civilians were trapped. Food supplies evaporated. The fertile lands were gone, and there was no protein. By mid-1968, a silent killer swept through the refugee camps and villages. Kwashiorkor, a severe form of malnutrition caused by a lack of protein. Symptoms included distended, bloated bellies, discolored, thinning, rust-red hair, skin peeling away from emaciated limbs, hollow, vacant eyes. Thousands of children began dying every single day. The landscape was transformed into a mass graveyard. Then, the media arrived. For the first time in human history, graphic, high-definition images of a famine were broadcast via satellite into Western living rooms during primetime news. Biafra hired a Swiss public relations firm, Mark Press, which systematically flew international journalists into the enclave. The strategy worked. The world watched in horror as images of skeletal children with bloated bellies filled the pages of Life magazine, the New York Times, and television screens across Europe and America. Public outrage was immediate and overwhelming. John Lennon returned his MBE to the Queen in protest of Britain's complicity in the war. In New York, a 22-year-old student named Bruce Mayrock set himself on fire outside the United Nations to protest the genocide in Biafra.
So the accelerant that was used, it appears to be some kind of alcohol-based substance that she used to clean. That's all we have right now.
As long as we go right down the line, left to right, and we'll decide we'll take right.
Joint Church Aid and the Red Cross defied international law to launch the Biafran airlift. With all ports blocked, the only way into Biafra was by air. The Biafrans built a makeshift runway out of a widened public road in the middle of the rainforest. Uli Airstrip. Codenamed Annabelle, Uli became the busiest airport in Africa after Johannesburg. Every night, under the cover of pitch darkness, brave humanitarian pilots flew aging cargo planes loaded with powdered milk and medicine. They flew without lights, navigated by radar, and landed on a strip illuminated only for 30 seconds at a time to avoid being blown out of the sky by Nigerian MiG fighters. The pilots called it Jesus Christ Airlines. It saved an estimated 1 million lives, but it could only slow, not stop, the inevitable tide of death. Biafra's resistance wasn't just passive. In 1969, a legendary Swedish eccentric and aviator, Count Carl Gustaf von Rosens, shocked the world by forming a miniature Biafran Air Force. He took 5 tiny, single-engine Swedish training planes, outfitted them with rocket pods, and trained Biafran pilots. Known as the Biafra Babies, this ragtag fleet flew low over the tree lines, launching daring stealthy missile strikes against federal airfields, destroying multi-million-dollar Russian MiG jets on the ground. It was a spectacular display of guerrilla defiance, but it was a drop of water in an ocean of fire. By late 1969, the Biafran enclave had shrunk to a tiny fraction of its original size, a claustrophobic pocket of land packed with millions of starving, exhausted human beings. In December 1969, Nigerian forces launched Operation Tailwind, led by General Olusegun Obasanjo. Federal forces launched a massive, multi-pronged final assault. They cut the remaining Biafran territory in half. On January 7, 1970, Uli Airstrip, the beating heart of Biafran survival, came under heavy artillery fire. It was the end. Realizing that total annihilation was hours away, Ojukwu handed over power to his deputy and boarded a plane into exile in Ivory Coast, claiming he was searching for peace. On January 12, 1970, Major General Philip Effiong, chief of the Biafran General Staff, stood before the microphones to surrender. His voice was thick with exhaustion.
And we have with us today Colonel Obasanjo, and unfortunately the other field commanders are not able to be with us at this moment. But we have Colonel Obasanjo, who is the commander of 3 Marine Commando, who have been able to capture a number of senior secessionist officers, and he had brought them to Lagos to see us in order to let us have their acceptance of the spirit of one Nigeria.
Formally give up secession and report for the appointment and redeployment.
Your Excellency.
Glad to see you again.
My pleasure.
How are you?
Very well indeed.
Glad to see you again. Thank you.
Patrick Amadi.
How are you?
Excellency.
Glad to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Glad to see you again.
It's an
Welcome.
experience.
Honestly. Glad to see you again.
And I would like, therefore, to take this opportunity to say that I, Major General Philip Effiong, officer administering the government of the Republic of Biafra, now wish to make the following declaration. That we affirm we are loyal Nigerian citizens and accept the authority of the federal military government of Nigeria. That we accept the existing administrative and political structure of the Federation of Nigeria. That any future constitutional arrangement will be worked out by representatives of the people of Nigeria. That the Republic of Biafra hereby ceases to exist.
On January 15, 1970, exactly 4 years to the day after the very first coup, the war officially ended. General Yakubu Gowon took to the airwaves and delivered a speech that surprised the world. He did not call for trials, executions, or mass imprisonment. Instead, he declared a policy of asterisk, no victor, no vanquished, and promised the 3 R's, asterisk, reconstruction, rehabilitation, and reintegration.
The so-called rising sun of Biafra is set forever. It will be a great disservice for anyone to continue to use the word Biafra to refer to any part of the East Central state of Nigeria. The tragic chapter of violence is just ended. We are at the dawn of national reconciliation. Once again, we have an opportunity to build a new nation. You will have heard that my government may seek the assistance of friendly foreign governments.
The Biafran War was a tragic symphony of political failure, ethnic fracture, and human endurance. It showed the world how quickly a modern state could descend into tribal warfare, and it introduced the global community to the agonizing sight of televised starvation. "50 years later, the ghosts of Biafra still whisper through the forests of Nigeria, a haunting reminder of what happens when a nation breaks apart, and the terrible price paid by those who are caught in the fracture.